Hey friends, today we're trying something a little bit different. I'm going to answer your music and ukulele questions instead of rambling on about whatever the heck I so choose. If you submit a question and I don't get to it here, do not fret. I'm going to do more of these videos, as well as some of the questions were just a little bit too in-depth to address in this smaller format, so I'll be making full videos for some of the topics that were submitted. Let's get started. Question number 1. Can I just play an E7 when it says E? No. Yes. Maybe. To be honest, it really depends on the context of the song. There's sometimes that E7 will work, but many times it's not going to. It's best to usually play what the composer intended there. If it's an E, play an E, not an E7. But why is this? That's really the big question. So an E is a 3-note chord, a triad: E, G sharp, and B. An E7 adds an extension to this. We add the flatted 7th, which is a D natural in this case. So an E7 would sound like that as opposed to. So you can hear that the E7 is very much less stable. It sounds like it is moving somewhere. And that's not going to work in many keys. When we have, say, the key of A major, many times you can just substitute an E7 because an E7 naturally occurs in that key. If we just play A, E7, A, that works just fine, right? As opposed to A, E, A. Works just fine, a slightly different tonality and color to the chord, but it doesn't work. On the other hand, say we're playing, I don't know, in the key of B, if we had a B major chord, just to E, like that, we have that sound. Now if we subbed an E7 here, that doesn't quite sound right. And the reason for that is the note that we are adding, the D, to this E7 chord is not in the key of B. We would naturally have a D sharp. So that E7 sounds off because we're using a non-scale tone. So the key really is to play what's written. That's what we generally want to do, but also use your ear. You'll find that many times if you try to substitute an E7, it's not going to sound good. Always trust your ear. What is the best practice routine for a daily 30-minute session for beginners or continuing beginners? That's really hard to say. The thing is that everyone learns differently and everyone has different objectives in playing, but it's important to structure your practice to meet the objectives that you are looking for. If you want to become, just really an overall musician and have facility on the instrument, I would recommend taking 5 to 10 minutes to just practice scales and arpeggios in different fingerings to try to help yourself just build up more knowledge of the fretboard, as well as practicing new chords. Say pick one key each week and play just the chords in that key, transpose a song to that key. Other than that, you should also be practicing a piece of music. It's not really important that we learn all these pieces for performance, but they're great vehicles to use to become better at the instrument, but also address new techniques in a context as opposed to just always isolating them. But I would really break it up into 3 separate sections. Practice songs for, say, 10 minutes, just a few new songs. Push yourself to learn new little sections of a song, even if it's just a couple bars. Your scales and chords and arpeggios, just the basis of music. And then also do practice sight reading, whether it's tabs or notation, it doesn't really matter, or even just a chord chart, a song that you're familiar with but have not played. Sight reading is very important to propel your progress as a musician. But all in all, practice routines really come down to how you learn best and what is most effective for you. And you're going to have to try different techniques in practicing and see what works best for you. How does a teacher help a student with no rhythm? This is one of my absolute favorite topics to talk about. When we talk about music, we really have 3 aspects of music. We have melody, the single notes, the harmony, the chords, and the rhythm, the beat, really, that's underlying the music. And when we think about music, really, rhythm is the key to everything. That's the most important thing. If you think about just strumming through a song, you can mess up a chord change and fix it and get around it, but if you drop a beat, that is a huge problem. So I always think about teaching rhythm as if I was teaching children, because sometimes I do teach very young students. And the thing is, everyone has rhythm, whether they know it or not. But when I initially teach rhythm, what we talk about is pulse, or the underlying 1, 2, 3, 4. We all have a heartbeat. That's a pulse. We have clocks ticking in our house that's 60 beats per minute. We all can hear that. But we have to understand that and be able to just play regular old quarter notes at an even, steady tempo, 1, 2, 3, 4, before we can talk about subdividing that beat. Because when we talk about more complex rhythms, more or less we're talking about math. Eighth notes are half of a beat. An eighth note triplet is a 3-note subdivision of a beat. 16th notes are a quarter of a beat. 32nd notes are an eighth of a beat. And these are all very even subdivisions. But the key is that you need to learn the pulse first, just the quarter. Teach the rhythms independently of the instrument. When we start teaching rhythms, do it with just clapping and saying the rhythms. Saying the rhythms 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and helps us so much internalize this without worrying about technique on the instrument. I think the key to teaching rhythm to students that are having trouble with it is just finding their pulse first. With the limitation of notes and therefore chords, why do we strive to write something new? Now, this is really addressing Western music. Our 12-tone system has limitations in how many short melodic segments we can have, the harmony of tunes. I mean, really, they've all probably been played at this point. But there's so much more going on. We have microtonal music where we have all these in-between notes. We have very different melodic patterns that we put over top of harmony. But really, I mean, we're building on what is the past when we create new music. We are not creating something new. We are using concepts that we have learned throughout the years, whether it's instinctually or through book learning or through transcription, to make new music. So what we're really doing is not making something new, but building upon the concepts of the past. Should I put the high G on soprano and leave low G for tenor? No. Do whatever you want. I play low G on some of my soprano ukes. The original ukes that were strung with low G strings are soprano ukes. I do agree that in general, on the longer scale of a tenor or concert uke, a G generally sounds better when it's a low G on there as opposed to a soprano. But no, it works perfectly fine on soprano. Don't think that your instrument size itself is going to limit your choice. What can we do to transform a simple arrangement into a jazz one? Just by adding 7th and 9th chords, and which chords? That's a very big question, but actually what I want to address is kind of a corollary to this question, because this is what it boils down to. I think there's a huge misconception in a lot of the world as to what is jazz and what constitutes jazz. And there's a lot of debate about what really makes jazz jazz, but the one thing that I think most people agree on is that jazz needs to have improvisation. That is the key. Changing the harmony to dominant 7th chords, 9th chords, major 7th chords, all of this, that is certainly important and things that we see in music, but really for jazz to be jazz, what we are doing is using the harmonic structure as a vehicle for solos. So when we're adding all of these extensions to it, these color tones, that's just modifying the harmony. But to make something jazz, what we need to focus on is improvisation. What do you teach in your online private lessons? Whatever people want to learn. That's really my goal as a teacher, and I have a few different techniques that I use. Most people that come to me want to learn the style that I play. I do play a variety of different styles, but of course I specialize in ragtime and swing uke playing, those earlier mainland genres, but I also do teach classical and Hawaiian repertoire and all of that. If someone comes to me as a blank slate, I do my best to teach them how to be a complete musician. Any instrument that we learn all the techniques to play this, and we learn the standard repertoire, but ultimately what we're learning is music. Because music is a partial language that we can really convey on any instrument. This is just your tool. But if you learn how to play music, you can put that really on any instrument. Maybe you don't end up wanting to play uke for the rest of your life, or you want to learn a new instrument. All of the musical concepts transfer over. And obviously I do teach technique very strongly as well, but that's only a small part of the game. The other big thing in my teaching is that I believe that a teacher's goal is to try to make themselves obsolete. That is always my goal, is to give my students the facility to figure out the problems that they're having on the instrument and how to solve them themselves. Because of this, I don't keep students for years or anything like that, because I think it's important, and really one of the most important things in music is to how to learn on your own. Of course, teachers are not needed whatsoever, especially at a beginner level. Technique is very, very important. I mean, even to avoid injury and repetitive strain while playing instruments. But in the long run, you really want to learn how to tackle problems yourself. And a large part of that goes back to my initial point of learning how to play music and what music is, and thus how to apply it to the instrument. A lot of jazz standards are pretty short with just the A and B, and it takes under a minute to play through. Do you have any tips on how to make them longer and more interesting when playing without a band? This is one of my constant struggles. I do a lot of solo playing, but I also play quite a bit with just a rhythm section, so people who aren't taking many solos. In my style of music, in the older jazz vein, I very much think of Johnny Marvin, the great uke player, and I'll link to one of his albums down below. He was really a master at this. He had some records that were just solo uke and vocals, but really the key is mixing things up, especially in these older jazz tunes. We don't really do full chorus improvisations like you have in the bop period. We do much shorter. Maybe you'll take 2 A's or a B, and we could think of that the same way if we're doing it solo. We can take 2 A's in a chord melody solo, and then we could whistle the B section. We could do a mouth trumpet for the C section. We could scat over the other A section. But the other thing to remember is a song doesn't have to be long. Even these standards, if you go through 3 choruses of it, it's still a 2-minute tune, and that's absolutely okay. Part of the problem is listener fatigue. You don't want to just go over the same harmonic structure over and over and over again and reiterate these same basic concepts. So really keep them short. It's okay to keep them short, but vary the textures, chord melody, finger picking, different vocalizations and whistling that you can use, things such as that, but mix it up. That is the key. I hope that you've enjoyed this, and if you have any other questions, please do drop them in the comments below, and I will do my best to get to them the next time that we have a question and answer. I'll see you all next week.